my name's Dave, and in this video we're going to talk about foreach statements. So we've talked about lists and arrays, and there are other collections in C#. Those are the two most common ones. And a lot of times what we need to do with collections is go through each item in the list or array. We need to go through each item one at a time and do something for each item. Alright, so how do we do this? And let's say we want to simply print out each item in a list. So we just want to print out each item in a list. So how do we do that? Okay, so I've created a list, or store list again, right? And I've populated it with 5 items just using the add method. I could use the collection initializer, but just use the add method. So I've added 5 items. So I have this list, right? When this program runs, it's going to be a store list, a list of strings in the computer's memory, identified as store list, right? It's going to hold 5 items. So I'm adding 5 items to the list. So I have this list of 5 items. And let's say I just simply want to print out each one of these items. I'm just going to print it to the Outlook window, right? So I'm going to print each one of these items. That's what we need to do. So how will we do that? And let's look at this. Let's do it using the console.writeLine. Alright, I'm going to uncomment this. Okay, by the way, when you have to write several values like this, this is just something I like to do. Write line. And it's it'd be a lot of typing to type each one of those. You could just copy this, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V, and then you just change these items, or these numbers, or so that's just something I like to do a lot. Just threw that in for free, save you a little bit of typing. Okay, so we're going to print out each item in the list. We've got 5 items, so I've got a console.writeLine for each one of these items. And again, I'm using the indexing, right? The square brackets. That's how we do the indexing. I've got the index number. Starts at 0, so I've got the index number in the square brackets. So this is how I'm going to access each one of these items. Let's go ahead and run this, and it should print to the output window. Not the console, but the output window, because this is a form app. And by the way, I have a form app. Should have mentioned that in the beginning. I have a form app. I called it foreach. You can name yours whatever you like. I have one button, and I have one label. And I didn't bother naming it. It's a good idea. It's good practice to name these things whenever you're accessing them in the code. If you're not accessing them in the code, it doesn't matter. You don't need to name them unless you just want to. But if you're accessing them from the code, it's good practice to name these things. And actually, I did name it. I've forgotten that I named it. So the label is LBL store list, which is a good name. And for the button, did I name the button? I did not name the button. So just button 1, so that's fine. If I did name it, I would prefix it with BTN, so that lets me know it's a button. Also, when you access it in the code, I can just type in LBL, and it's going to give me all the labels. Alright, so that's just good practice. So I have one button, have one label. That's all here. Let's go back to the code. And I'm going to write this to the output window. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I've got the code in the button's click event, so it's not going to execute until I click the button. So I'm going to click the button, and it should write this to the output in the locals window right now. So I'm going to click on the output. Again, if you don't see output, you can always go to debug when the debug is running, or when the program's running. So debug, Windows, output, and again, this is Visual Studio 2010. If we're using 2015, might be a little different, or later version. So debug, Windows, output. if you don't see it down here. If you do, just click on the tab output, and you can see that it printed all 5 of those items in the console, in the output window, right? So all five of these items were printed to the output window. Okay, so that worked, that did the trick, but that's a very static, limiting way of doing it. What if you have 1,000 items? What if you have 10,000 items? And you're going to do this 10,000 times? Of course not. And sometimes you don't know how many items are in there. Remember, with the list, you can add, remove, so you don't know how many items are in the list. So let's look at a much more dynamic way of doing this. And I'm just going to comment this out. Okay, so we have our list, right? It's already populated. So let's look at the for each. And actually, let's go ahead and delete this. Okay. So I'm going to type in F-O-R-E. F-O-R-E. Make sure you add the E, because there's also a for loop, which we'll talk about later. We want to add the E, for E. Right, for E, and it's short for each, and you see here for each is selected, right? Right now, when you have that typed in, now just tab, just click tab, or type tab. So once again, for E, tab, right, tab. So for E, tab, and this sets up a stud, right? It sets up a stud for the for each, right? And basically, the for each just, it says do something for each item, for each element or item in a collection. You know, whether it's an array, a list, or some other collection, just do something for each item in the list, right? So for each one of these items in our list, it's going to execute this code, right? And so note the syntax in the parentheses. The first thing is the type, and this is new here, the VAR. VAR is a way to, and this is just default. This is the default keywords here. The default setup, right? This is a stud, just a default kind of thing. You can change these values. So the VAR, which is the default, this tells C# to, it basically says you figure out what type this is. You do it, right? You figure it out. So you can put any type of data. Right here I can put a string. This could be a string, an integer. This can be anything, right? And the VAR says you figure it out. You figure it out. When C# goes to compile, and it sees this VAR, it looks here and figures out what type this is, right? But in general, there are times when we need this. In general, you want to avoid this. You could do this every time. You instead of declaring variables as string, as integers, or bool, you could always just use this, and C# would figure it out. However, it's bad practice because it makes your code less clear. It's a lot clearer when you see string or int, and then you know that's a string, that's an int, right? So you want to type in the type here, whatever it is. So we have a list of strings, right? So we want to use string here. We want to use string. So we want to type in, that's the data type, right? And the variable, this is just a variable like any other variable. We call it a range variable. It's a range variable. It's just a variable. It's just a box that holds a string, right? So if you look at this syntax, this is what we've seen before several times. We're just declaring a variable. In this case, we call it a range variable. It's just a variable. And it's of string type, right? So we've declared the type. So we have this little box called item. We've named it item. And so our label, right? And it's of string type. So you can only put strings in there. And the in keyword, it basically says in this collection, right? In this collection. It's just the keyword. It's basically get the items from this collection. That's all it's saying. Get the items in this in this collection, right? And the collection is just the default word here. You put whatever collection you want in here. So, and basically one item at a time in turn gets assigned to this range variable, and that may not be clear right now, but we'll see that. And let's go ahead and put in our collection. Our collection is store lists, and you see it's highlighted, and you see the yellow is kind of highlighted, so I'm just hit enter, and there we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit enter again. Hit enter again, and you see it went into the curly brackets, right? So now I'm in the curly brackets. Now I just type in the code, and it's going to execute this code, right? Whatever this code block, it's going to execute it for each item in the store list. In this case, we have 5 items in the store list. So let's do our console.writeLine and item, right? This is our range variable. Our range variable. And now let's go ahead and set a breaking point. I'm going to type F9 to set a breaking point right here. And let's look at this, because I think it'll be clear if we see this in the debug window. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, we'll click the button to execute the code, and we'll look at it in locals. Open the locals window, and I'm trying to get the double arrows here. I'll pull that down. Okay, and come down a little bit. All right, so for each item in store lists, for each item in store list, right? For each one of these items in the store list. This is our store list, right? We have these 5 items. We've already created this list. We have 5 items in the list, index 0 through 4, right? The N says in that list, right? And the item is our range variable, so each item, one at a time, will get assigned to this this range variable called item, right? So let's go ahead and step, and let's look at item. This range variable now has the value Nutty Buddy bars, right? And you can see it down here in the locals window. It has the string Nutty Buddy bars, right? And that's the first item on the list, Nutty Buddy bars. So that first item got assigned to this range variable, right? The first time. And now it's going to execute the code for that item. So let's keep stepping. And WriteLine, you want to just write to that output window. And there we go, Nutty Buddy bars, right? So that's the first execution. So let's keep stepping. And there's more items in the list, so it's going to keep going, right? And step again, and now we can see the second item in our list. What's the second item? Refried beans, right? So now the second item, which is index 1, got assigned to this variable, this range variable, right? So now this variable holds, right? This is box, a little box that holds. And by the way, these range variables, they're only good for the for each statement, but within these code block, right? You could use them outside of this code block, or you can only use them within this code block. All right, so they're only good within this is the scope. All right, this is the scope of that variable is inside these curly brackets in this code block, right? So this now has the second item in the list, which is refried beans. So let's keep stepping. And it just writes whatever's in this little box. So this is variable. In this case, it's refried beans. Write that to the screen, and there you go, refried beans. So that's the second iteration, right? Iteration. We're iterating through the list, transversing, iterating, going through one at a time. So we're iterating through the list. And just keep on iterating. All right, iterate some more. And there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now all 5 items have been written to the output window, right? So that should be it. So that's the last one, and so that's it. So now there are no more items in the list. So now the for each statement is done. It's over with. And it's checking to see if there's any more. That's it, and it's done, right? Okay, so here we're going to do something a little more interesting than just printing the name to the screen. or to the output window, we're going to enumerate the list. Let's enumerate this list, right? So we need to, one way we can do this is get the index number. The index number, remember the index numbers start at 0, right? So we want to enumerate the list. We want the list to say, 1 period honey bun, right? 2 period Nutty Buddy bars, whatever it is. So we want to enumerate the list. So one way we can do this is get the index number, right? And we can use this method called index of. Index of, and this is a method of our list, right? This store list. This is our variable that holds our list of strings, and one of the members of that list is a method called index of. And again, we can type these parentheses, open parenthesis, and this is a method that has, I can use my arrows, up and down arrows, to see the other variations, and this may be off the screen, but you can use up and down arrows right here to see that this has 3 different variations. This method has 3 different variations. 1 of 3. This is 1 of 3. You can use your up or down arrows to see the other ones. And I know some of this is going off screen, but I'm using the up and down arrows to see the different variations. We only need this one. And this one says pass a string item to the method. So we're just going to pass it the string, the store item. In this case, this is our range variable. This is our variable for the for loop. You can think of the range variables. It's a variable that's for the for each loop, right? The for each statement. So whatever's in there, it's honey buns or whatever, we're going to get the index of that item. We're going to return the index of that item, right? And drop it in this box, in this variable. And up here we've declared this variable index. It's an int of int type. Give it a default value of 0. Just dropped a 0 in this box. And actually that is the default anyway, but I'm just doing it explicitly, right? Here we've declared a string. And by the way, we could do it in here. But then we're creating a box every time around. So you got 10,000 items in the list, and you're creating a new box every single time. And that's a little bit of a waste. So really only need to declare the variable, the box, one time. And I'm just going to put an empty string in there, just an empty string. And by the way, you could also do that. It's same thing, exact same thing. This is just a way to make it look clearer, right? It just looks clear. String empty, so both do exactly the same thing. So I'm putting an empty string in this variable. Just putting the default value of 0 in this variable. This is of string type. This is of int type. So this is going to hold my index number, and this is going to hold the line, the string that I write to the output window, right? So this index of store list, that's our list. Index of is the method that gets the index number of this item, whatever item we pass to it, right? The index of that item, right? And this is a string list, so we're passing it this is a string, right? This is holding a string. This range variable, right, is holding a string because it's a list of strings, right? So this gets the index number, stores it here. And here we want to add 1 to the index number, right? So we want to enumerate the list. We don't want to start at 0, even though index numbers start at 0. So we don't want it to say like 0 period honey bun, 1 period, we want to start at 1. So we want to add 1 to the index numbers, right? And that's all this does, just adding 1. This is a shortcut. We could also do it this way. Index plus 1, same. But the other way, this is just the shortcut, right? So we're just adding 1 to this. Whatever's in there, just add 1 to it, right? Okay, and here's the string line, the variable, and index, this is our index number. We've added 1 to it, right? And now we're going to explicitly convert it to a string. We're going to call this toString method. Remember, we can only print strings, or we can only assign strings to the text properties and write strings to the screen. So we're going to convert it to a string, right? And we're going to use this plus sign. What does this plus sign do? It's concatenates, right? When you're using the plus sign with strings, you're concatenating. It's the concatenation operator, right? Just joining strings together, gluing strings together. That's all it's doing. Just combining strings. So we've converted this index, which we've added one, and here we've converted it to a string, and we're going to combine it, concatenate it, combine it with this string. And this happens to be a string literal, right? A string literal with the period, right? We're enumerating, so we want to, like one period, whatever. And we'll put a little space in here, just make it look neat. And another concatenation operator, and now we're concatenating this with the store item, right? With this range variable, whatever's in there, range variable. And shall call. So see you when I get back. Okay, back from shall. So okay, so the for each. See, this is our range variable, and I'm forgetting where I left off. So this is our range variable. This is the line that holds the string. Here we're concatenating using the concatenation operators. We're just concatenating these strings together, right? And we're converting this integer, this int, this number, to a string here. And then we're just writing this line to the console. Okay, so let's set a breaking point here. And let's go ahead and run it. Okay, execute the code, and I'm in the output window, and you can see that it's okay. So these are values from I forgot to comment the other one out. I forgot to comment this out, but that's okay. So okay, scroll down. Okay, so these are coming from the other one, right? So it threw me for a loop for a second there. So I forgot to comment those out. So this line has not executed. So let's look at this. Let's look at it in locals. And line, here's the variable line, holds the string, right? And right now it only holds, drag this over. It holds that one, one period, nutty buddy bar. So this is the first iteration, right? First iteration. So let's keep stepping. So that's the first iteration, and here comes the second iteration. And now it holds that second item, store list. The second item is refried beans, index 1, right? So this gets the index 1. That's the index position. That's what that index of method does. Gets the index position of that string, that item. Here we're going to add 1 to it because we don't want the enumeration numbers to start at 0. So we're going to add 1, right? So now the number's 2 now. We've added 1 to it. Convert it to a string. We're going to concatenate with this period and space, and then whatever the string is. In this case, refried beans. And so, and now we're going to write this to the console line. So scroll down. So nutty buddy bars has already been written to the screen. And let's keep stepping. So now here comes refried, 2 period refried beans. So we're enumerating the list, right? So just keep stepping. And I recommend doing this on your own and just hovering over these variables, looking at them in the locals, watching them change. Go through it, iteration by iteration, right? And just look at all the values and see what it's doing. The best way for this, because the for loops and for each loops can be, or loops in general, can be a little confusing at first. So it's just a matter of playing around with it and having some fun with it, changing values and just watching the value. It'll really help to watch the values change in the locals window, right? So let's go ahead and stop this. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. And we'll go up here and comment this out so it won't confuse me again. Alright. Okay, so I'm just realizing that I did something that's kind of ill-advised, and without even thinking about it. I wrote for each. I named this app for each, right? I named it for each, and that's okay. What Visual Studio did for me, thankfully, is added this @ sign. The problem with it is that for each is the keyword, right? So I'm using a keyword for my name. I named my project a keyword, which is probably not a good idea. But Visual Studio looked out for me and added this little @ sign. And if you use the @ sign, then you can use a keyword for your name. But it's probably ill-advised. And if I was thinking about it, I would have named it something else. So I just noticed that. Thought I'd point that out. So for each, and that's with anything you're naming, variables, methods, anything that your names of your projects, classes, anything you're naming, you want to stay away from from keywords. You want to stay away from keywords. Remember, the keywords are blue, right? And if you try to use a keyword, actually Visual Studio will bark at you. So that's what this @ sign is about, and I just noticed it, and I thought I'd point it out. So, okay, let's keep moving. Focus is on for loops, or for each loops. We'll talk about for loops in another section. Okay, so this is uncomment demo 3. Take a look at this. This is basically the same thing, so I'm not going to go over all of this here. But here we're going to assign it to our label. We have a label here. It's called label LBL store list, right? And I'm going to assign it to that text property, right? So, and I've added this. I'm concatenating this new line. Environment.newLine. You can use this, or you can use the escape character \n. That just says create a new line. Just say create. We don't want all this on one long line. We want to create a new line, right? So it's like if you're in Microsoft Word, if you hit enter, same thing, right? Same kind of thing. We just go to the next line. But let's use this environments.newLine. Does the same thing. Actually, it adds carriage return also, but it just makes your code clear, So I recommend using this, but it doesn't matter. You can use the escape character if you prefer. So this concatenates or joins that escape character, the new line, to this. And note here, I'm using this +sign equal. This is a shortcut. This is a concatenation operator. So we're dealing with strings, so the +sign means concatenate or join together. So for each iteration, we're going to concatenate this line, right? And we're going to do this for each item in the list. And then once it finishes, then we're going to assign it to this text property. So let's go ahead. I'm going to stop right here. So it's going to go ahead and run through the iteration. Actually, let's stop here. Let's stop here. And let's go ahead and run this. We'll just go through it real fast. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute the code. Alright, so line 1 is null. There's an empty box, right? There's an empty box right now. So let's go through the next iteration, the first iteration. And now we can see we have something in there now. If we go to the locals in line, we have this line. We have our new line right here. \r is carriage return. \n is new line. So that's what the environment.newLine does. And so it just gives us a new line. So we have this first one. So let's iterate again. And now we have the second one, right? And right here it's on one line, but when it goes to print it to the screen, it's going to add these characters here, these escape characters, are going to add a new line, right? So let's go ahead and let's keep going. So we're just concatenating, joining each one together. And you see this line's getting longer and longer. Right, so now we have this big long string, right? And there we go. So this is just one string. The new line here, that environment.newLine said create a new line, so that way it's not all one long line. and it just the concatenation operator just kept joining each line together, iteration after iteration, right? Went through 5 iterations, one for each item in our list, and there you go. And it just it assigned that string to the text property on the label, right? And that's what this line does, just assign that. So this just kept concatenating each line for each iteration, and just kept assigning it to this box, right? Actually, it's reassigning it to the box or the variable. And then when the loop is done, when the for each is done, and then at the end, after that, then it assigns it to this text property, right? And again, if that's not crystal clear, just type this code in, run it, step through it in the debugger, look at the values in the locals. The more you do that, the more comfortable you're going to be with the loops, and the clearer it's going to be. So let's go ahead and comment this out. Let's try that again. Comment that out. Let's look at this last one. And I'm not going to spend too much time. It's basically what we've seen before. And actually, it's pretty much what we've seen before. We're doing a shortcut here. Okay, so the only difference between we're not going to set a breaking point. The only difference here is we're calling this method called toUpper here. So that's the only thing right here we don't call it. So here on the variable, which was a string, right? And one of its members is this method called toUpper, which just makes everything uppercase, right? So let's go ahead and run it, and we'll see that. And everything should be uppercase, right? So there you go. It just makes everything uppercase. So there you go. Thanks for hanging in there. That concludes this video, and I'll see you in the next.